cardiovascular system. There's a mention here of 50% occlusion. Could you tell the jury a little bit about what that means?
So it just means that he had the beginning stages of coronary artery disease, so that the lumen of the vessels in his heart were thickened. It's usually not thought to be significant until they're at least 75% occluded or more, and this is a common finding in adult males in general, and then adult women as they also age. There was no indication of any kind of coronary artery thrombus to indicate that he had a blood clot form in his heart and cause a heart attack. And so there was no damage to the heart muscle. The heart was within normal range for weight.
Okay, so that was not a cause of death?
No.
Okay. Respiratory system, you noted trachea, bronchi, foam present.
Correct.
I think you've said that was probably from CPR.
So it's probably originated from his fentanyl overdose.
I see.
CPR can also cause pulmonary edema, but since he had no return of circulation during this CPR process, the majority of that fluid and that foam probably originated from the drug overdose, but CPR can still contribute to it.
I see. Okay. Pleural surface small tan white nodules.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So on the surface of his lungs, he had these little tiny white nodules all over, which are little granulomas. I looked at them. So in addition to removing all of the organs, I also did histologic examination on the main organs, which means I took a little piece of tissue so that it could then be cut very thinly and then stained and looked at under the microscope. So
and did you look under the microscope at these?
I did.
Okay.
And so you can visually see them on the lungs just looking at them grossly. They were very obvious. And they're just little small granulomas that were coating the surface of the lungs.
I see. Is there some significance in this case about those?
There is, because his history, his work employment history, he was a stonemason. And so all of that dust that's created when you're cutting either brick or blocks, you can inhale it if you're not wearing a respirator or a mask, and then that goes into your lungs, and your body tries to protect itself by sequestering that stuff off, and so then these little granulomas form.
I see. Did that contribute to his death?
I don't believe it did. He had the granulomas present. He also had a small amount of pleural fluid present associated with these, but it wasn't significant enough. There wasn't like scar tissue that it was in his lungs that was preventing him from breathing or anything like that. So I felt like it did not contribute to his death.
I see. Did you note anything about his liver and biliary system, biliary?
From my recollection, the liver was normal. There was no surprises there.
Okay. What did you note, if anything, about the digestive system?
Again, I don't have any notes in front of me, but he had about 700 milliliters of pink fluid that also had food particles in it that were partially digested. Some of that was retained and saved for toxicology purposes.
Did you have a discussion with Brianna Peterson from NMS about the volume that you measured from the gastric?
I may have. I don't recollect it.
I see. Do you have any idea about the pink coloration? Was that from anything that you're aware of, or?
No.
Is it okay? Reticuloendothelial system.
So that's referring to more like your organs like the spleen or lymph nodes, things that have to do with immune response. And he did have, so when you have those types of granulomas in the lungs, it's not unusual for the lymph nodes surrounding the lungs to also have the same kind of stuff in them and also have granuloma formation. And I did see that when I did histology on those lymph nodes in that area.
I see.
Otherwise, the spleen and everything looked normal.
Okay. Endocrine system? Was there anything that you documented?
No.
Excuse me. And musculoskeletal system, anything?
Other than the rib fractures, it was all normal.
I see. Now you mentioned you sent some samples out to histology. Did you receive those things back and look under the microscope yourself later?
I did, for part of them I did. Part of them were examined, I guess, at the state lab. So let me clarify. So we did microbiology testing of the lungs, which you just collect a swab. And so each lung was swabbed and sent to the lab. We had that tested for bacterial infection as well as fungal infection and then TB infection. And that was significant because we had all of these granulomas in the lungs, as well as he'd recently had a history of having COVID. And so just to confirm that there was no active infection going on that I could document that was causing those granulomas, like TB, for example, or any kind of fungal infection, all to explain what was going on in the lungs. And the only thing that I saw, again, was the granulomas that were due to his work history. In addition, I did special stains to confirm that there were no fungal elements present and that there were no significant changes to the lung tissue, as well as the heart and the liver and the kidneys. I did see the granulomas in the lungs and those lymph nodes.
So absolutely no fungal infection in the lungs?
No. And to clarify, that was not by culture, that was only by looking at the stain.
Okay.
So,
did you, we'll get to that, I guess, in just a minute. I guess with histology, you also sent out liver samples, epiglottis, or was this just part of your internal exam? Maybe I mixed that up.
I think I did submit a section of the epiglottis, and I'm not sure whether that was specifically because he had a history of allergies that was reported, and just to confirm that there was no evidence of anaphylaxis.
And was there?
The tissue was denuded, but I did not see any evidence of histamine release granules that were in the tissue itself, so I can't, it did not appear that anaphylaxis was an issue. Did you send out samples or send out samples to the health department for disease and fungal cultures? So I did for the bacterial cultures, I did for the TB stain or the Mycobacterium stain, and public health lab, we did an Auramine O stain, which is a special stain that they do looking for acid-fast bacteria, and that's to help rule out tuberculosis, which again would be something that would cause that type of granuloma pattern on the lungs. And that was negative, as reported by them, because they observed it. I did not look at that particular slide. In addition, we did bacterial cultures, again, on the right and left lung. Those grew up multiple organisms, and when I see that, usually what it means is it's just normal flora from the respiratory tree, and then as you are dead, these organisms just continue to grow inside your body, and so you will see more of them show up with these postmortem cultures. If the person was dead from a specific bacterial infection, say like streptococcal pneumonia or something like that, you should predominantly just see the streptococcal bacteria and not all of this other stuff quite as broadly. So that just looked like postmortem change. And then we did a blood bacterial culture, which also, it came back no growth, and so there was no evidence of any kind of sepsis. The COVID swab for SARS-CoV-2, which is the organism name, that was positive. So he did test positive for COVID, and my understanding is that he had been sick with COVID-like symptoms, more of like a cold, recently prior to his death. But at the time of autopsy, he did not show any evidence of like pneumonia that we would normally see for someone who's dying from COVID.
You had sent a vitreous sample to the tox lab for testing there.
It was routine to send vitreous samples to the state toxicology lab for volatile testing, which would be looking for various alcohols, like alcohol that you would ingest, like ethyl alcohol or methanol or other alcohols that could be determined whether that would participate in the cause of death or not.
and vitreous fluid is from the eyes?
That's correct.
Okay. So in this case, did you get a result back from them?
If I can get that report back, that would be helpful. But my recollection was that the vitreous fluid was negative for any type of volatiles. Yes, it's none detected for ethanol, acetone, isopropanol, or methanol.
Okay. Is there something important about vitreous versus blood with regards to alcohol that you're aware of?
Well, it's multiple things, actually. For one thing, it's kind of a sequestered area. You don't have direct blood flow to that area, so things just kind of pass through the membranes as opposed to having direct blood flow. And so it's kind of protected and it's delayed. And so like if you're comparing like a blood alcohol to the vitreous alcohol, the blood alcohol will be different than the vitreous alcohol depending on whether the alcohol is going up or going down in the intoxication time frame.
I see.
And then also because it's protected, you're less likely to have bacterial contamination of the vitreous fluid because some bacteria produce alcohols during decomposition, so you have more of this sequestered environment.
Okay, so a more perfect record, so to speak.
Yes. So the primary information was that there was a fentanyl level of 15 and a norfentanyl level of 3.3, and those are both in nanograms per mil. Additional information that was not confirmed but still indicated presence was naloxone, caffeine, and 4-ANPP.
Okay, so, and that's from the blood samples that were sent?
Correct, I'm sorry, because we did two different stages of testing.
Okay.
So this was all of the blood testing, and then after I got this testing back and we decided we needed more information, then we also had testing performed on gastric contents. And the purpose of that was to, A, determine if there were any other drugs present in the stomach contents that weren't necessarily showing up in the blood test, and then B, to give an idea of where the fentanyl might be coming from, because the question would be, was it orally ingested or was it injected, or, you know, trying to narrow that down a little bit.
Okay.
And so that was part of the rationale for doing the gastric testing.
Let's stick to the blood for a minute. First of all, where did you draw the blood?
So initially they probably would have attempted to do a femoral stick, but because when you die and you start going through all of these changes that your body goes through after you're dead, the blood clots. And so I'm not sure if this was specifically what happened for this case, but they probably tried to draw femoral blood, and because it's a smaller gauge needle, because they're just going down through the skin, they were probably unsuccessful in getting any of the blood to come up into the needle or any significant amount.
And so did whoever drew the blood from that team, where did they end up getting it from?
So they ended up having to go inside when we opened the body up, and they entered in through the inferior vena cava. And then you direct it down towards the femoral artery, because the syringe that you're using when you're collecting these samples, when you're going into the body, not through the skin, but once you're inside and actually doing it, is a huge syringe with a big long needle. So the needle itself is probably 5 to 6 inches long.
I see. So I'm not sure, femoral artery, I gather, is the legs?
You're going for the, yeah, so it's,
By your finger.
but usually when you're collecting it, when you're going through the skin, you're going in the groin area.
I see.
And so you kind of go femoral, inguinal region. And so in this particular case, you know, we weren't necessarily getting specifically femoral blood, but we weren't getting blood specifically from the inferior vena cava either. It was in that region.
Okay, so what is the inferior vena cava?
So in the body, you have arteries and veins. The arteries, generally, you're taking blood from the lungs that's oxygenated, and the heart distributes it out to the different portions of your body.
Okay.
And then the veins bring the deoxygenated blood back. And so the best source for collecting toxicology samples is peripheral blood, which is further away.
Okay.
And so when you're talking about the inferior vena cava, the leg veins come back and they connect in the middle, and this is the inferior vena cava that then eventually moves the blood back up to the heart. And so that's the process of bringing the peripheral blood then back up. And so it's still essentially peripheral blood, but you're getting closer to the major organs.
Okay, we'll talk about any problems with that in just a minute. So this quantity, you said there was, I think you said 15 nanograms per milliliter of fentanyl?
That's correct.
Okay. As a medical examiner, is that, explain what the importance of that number is.
So what you're doing is you're taking the information that you have and you're looking and comparing it to what would be expected in someone who's not taking the drug at all. You expect not to find any. Someone who's taking it as a prescribed medication, so you expect it to be within therapeutic range. And then once you start seeing above that, then you have the potential to go into a level that would be toxic, and if it's high enough, then potentially cause death.
Okay. And in this case, the number 15 nanograms in the blood, given its location.
So with the information available to me at the time of the autopsy, the decedent did not have a history of any kind of illicit drug use or prescription medication abuse. So the fentanyl level should have been 0. There should not have been any fentanyl or norfentanyl present. The fact that I have fentanyl present tells me that fentanyl was obviously ingested at some point recent. And then if you try to manipulate from the information that's available in the toxicology report as well as other toxicology references, then there's kind of estimated therapeutic range versus toxic range versus.
15 nanograms per milliliter, is that a toxic range?
In someone who is not prescribed this medication and taking it routinely, it is toxic.
And what is norfentanyl?
Norfentanyl is a metabolite of fentanyl. So you're ingesting the fentanyl drug, and then it's being absorbed and going through the liver, and then you are having it broken down into other pieces, and norfentanyl is one of those metabolites.
Yeah. At some point in your, at some point in this process, did you request a Doppel report? You know, the report of any prescriptions?
That was a routine process that we did on cases, just to review and see if there were things that we should be paying attention to. And in this particular case, I believe that we reviewed at least 1 year's worth of medical history, and we might have gone back even a little bit further once we saw the fentanyl present. But I don't have any further information other than just the fact that there was nothing that was seen except for some testosterone, I believe was the only thing that we saw that was in Doppel. So they don't see all medications. I think they just predominantly see things that are classified.
Schedule 1,
right,
2, 3,
right.
4. The, excuse me. So did the medical examiner's office receive prescription medication bottles and or prescriptions with the body?
Yes, they did.
And so did you or your team make note of those?
Yes. There was information in the investigator's report, and then there's also a separate form that shows the inventory that would have been done by a different investigator.
Okay. Can I take a look at State's or Defense Exhibit 3006, please? I think that's been offered and admitted and published.
Yes.
So
It hasn't been published yet, but.
Oh, it hasn't?
No.
Okay. But ask that it be published.
Okay, one moment. There you go.
Okay. So there appears to be 5 substances. Can you, I guess they're not substances. These are taken from labels of bottles?
Yes, these are medications.
Okay. Can you, starting from the top, going down to the bottom, can we talk about those?
So there's an injectable form of testosterone, doxycycline, hydrocodone / acetaminophen, and then disulfiram and naltrexone.
Okay, so what is the doxycycline?
It's an antibiotic. It's a broad spectrum antibiotic.
And according to the label, when was that prescribed?
That was prescribed July 3rd of 2019.
Okay. By Dr. Peterson?
Correct.
Okay, then the next one is hydrocodone.
It was prescribed June 29th of 2016 by Dr. Charles Lind.
And hydrocodone, do you know what that is? Or
It's a pain medication. It's another opiate pain medication.
okay. Then we've got disulfiram.
Sulfiram was prescribed December 9th of 2019 by Dr. Andrew Peterson.
And does it have multiple uses?
It does. As a prescribed drug, it's commonly used for alcohol prevention, so another common name for it is anabuse.
I see.
And then as an off-label use, it's used for chronic symptoms of Lyme disease.
I see. And naltrexone.
Naltrexone was prescribed August 24th of 2020 by Dr. Hunderman. Again, it's also used for helping to prevent people from drinking, and then it's also used for opiate reduction. So
And does it have an off-label use?
it's also used for chronic symptoms or complications from Lyme disease.
And this last one was prescribed in when?
2020. It's August 24th of 2020.
And how many were prescribed according to the label?
90 pills were prescribed. There were still 88 pills that were remaining.
Let's move on. You said that at some point you asked to have NMS lab examine the gastric contents.
I did.
And you published a second report?
Yes.
What was tested for out of the gastric contents?
So again, it was for a complex toxicology panel that does, a wide range of drugs. And in this particular, so in the gastric contents, and I just have to be careful when I'm looking at this because they've combined both items into one report. So there was some ethanol present. That was 279 milligrams per deciliter.
Okay, let's talk about that for just a second. Does that mean there was 279 milligrams per deciliter of vodka or beer in his stomach when they tested it?
Well, it's not that simple because you have to take the volume of the gastric contents and then determine a bunch of information. So in essence, yes, per the aliquot that was measured, this is my understanding of it, that's the amount that was present in that test.
Now you mentioned before about decomposition. Is that a potential problem for this
It is.
gastric sample?
It is because you'll have bacterial contamination in the stomach, and so that could potentially create a false positive.
Is there a way to determine what is alcoholic beverage versus decomposition alcohol?
No.
Okay. What else did you receive back?
So there was a presumptive positive for acetaminophen. There was a presumptive positive for caffeine. Quetiapine, which is an anti-psychotic medication, was present at 16,000 nanograms per mil. The ethanol level was confirmed. Again, fentanyl was present at 20,000 nanograms per mil, and then norfentanyl was present at 52 nanograms per mil, and acetylfentanyl was present at 29 nanograms per mil.
As a medical examiner, do those numbers mean something in particular to you?
They mean call the toxicologist.
Okay.
Basically, as a medical examiner, I can say that we know that he reportedly had a drink at bedtime, so that might explain that presence of ethanol, or it could be decomposition, either one. We know that he was not reported to be taking any medication, so then I have no explanation for the quetiapine or the norfentanyl or fentanyl or the acetylfentanyl.
You've already said for someone who is not using fentanyl that the 15 nanograms per milliliter in the blood was potentially toxic.
Correct.
How about 20,000 nanograms per milliliter in the stomach context?
I can honestly say, since I haven't talked to a toxicologist in over 3 years, that I would defer to them because it sounds like a lot, but without having reference ranges to go by or someone to consult, I would not jump on that bandwagon by myself.
Quetiapine, did you find any evidence that he had been prescribed quetiapine, either through Doppel or through the medicines that you looked at?
No, and I didn't see any mention of it in the medical records that I had reviewed at that time, so.
In addition to the NMS labs, was there other evidence that you looked at, specifically, say for example, pulmonary edema, that corroborated the information that NMS labs provided?
Yes, he had heavy lungs and foamy edema. You know, like I said before, some of that could have been contributed to the CPR, but it was still quite an abundant amount that was present, so I would have a hard time excluding that that wasn't also caused by the drug intoxication.
That's primarily occurs due to opioids?
Yes.
And
It can happen with other medications too that cause respiratory depression, but
there weren't any other intoxicants or medications other than
that,
fentanyl
that were
quetiapine
prescribed or that were contributing.
that we know of. There was quetiapine found, fentanyl found.
Quetiapine can cause some sedation, but in this instance where we didn't initially see it in the blood, I don't know what to make of that since it was only seen in the gastric.
Okay.
But I do believe.
Okay. Would you have been able to, having what you had at the time, you doing the autopsy, the records you had, would you have been able to confirm that?
I don't know how long the antibodies stick around, so I can't answer that effectively.
So possibly.
Possibly, but I don't know.
Okay. You indicated that one of the, and I can't remember which one, so if you can't remember, we'll pull up the medication that was listed. You mentioned opioid reduction for one of them. Do you recall that?
That's the naltrexone.
Naltrexone. And that was found in the system, correct?
No,
was
naloxone
not.
was found in a system that would have been given by when they were doing CPR, so that would have been given by EMS.
So the naltrexone, that's the one he had a prescription for.
Correct.
Tell me about opioid reduction. What do you mean by that?
So for people who are chronic abusers, whether it's using too much of their prescription medication or using illegal narcotics, and when they want to stop, then they might need something else to help them stop.
Okay. And do you recall how many were left?
Of the naltrexone?
Correct. Would it be helpful to pull it up?
Yes, it would be very helpful.
Just publish it just to
I want to say it was like
the doctor.
88 out of 90. So 90 were prescribed and there were still 88 present.
And how do you know, with the information you have, do you know how often they were, or Mr. Richins was told to take it?
If I were to go back and review the scene photos and look at the bottle, then yes.
But not with what you have.
Not with what I have, no. But this prescription was from 2020.
And do you know if those who are prescribed naloxone, is it something that you need to take daily, or does it vary just whenever you feel the urge, I guess?
I'm sure it's supposed to be taken on a certain time frame, but I don't know what that time frame
Okay,
is.
no problem. Mr. Burmester was talking to you about the blood alcohol level, or rather, the presence of alcohol. I'd like to talk about that now.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that initially there was no presence found in the initial testing, but then there was an expanded panel done, and it was at that point that it was found.
Well, it was found in a different sample.
Correct. The gastric.
So the initial testing was done on the vitreous fluid, which was negative.
And was it found in the blood?
No.
So in the vitreous and the blood, no alcohol found, correct?
Correct.
But then when the expanded one, it was the gastric, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, does that tell you in your profession, and you mentioned earlier that maybe it's a toxicologist world, so let me know if that's the case here, that does it tell you, those two things that you have, or I guess three, blood, vitreous, right, and then gastric, does it tell you kind of chicken before the egg, which one was ingested first? Can you tell me that?
I can tell you that there was no measurable intoxicant related to alcohol that was in his blood or vitreous.
And with your knowledge, if it's in your gastric, does that indicate timing-wise whether that was first and then it goes to the blood?
If it's from ingestion, I would say possibly. Bacterial decomposition, then it doesn't tell us much.
Okay. And did you do any I don't know, additional tests or studies to try to determine that in this case?
No,
Okay. Was that asked of you?
no.
Okay. At any point, was it asked to determine whether or not the fentanyl was taken along with alcohol?
These are questions that I would not be able to answer because I don't think that they are answerable.